check. Mic check. 1 2 1 2.
Welcome, guys.
Hey,
Thanks.
checkmate.
Hey, we're live right now.
Okay,
We're live. Pay attention.
Lock
okay,
in.
I'm in.
Lock in and load.
All right.
I'm in.
I think I said that wrong. But
Locked and loaded.
so we talked a little bit about what I want to talk about today. First off, I want you guys to just introduce yourself.
Okay, yeah. My name's Dan. I'm a former teacher of 3 years, and now I do nothing of note.
No, you appraise houses.
I do. I
You appraise
I raise
houses.
your taxes.
There you go.
And what about you?
And I'm Austin. I'm a father of one. I work at the grocery store, and I depreciate houses.
Yeah, you just ruin their internal
Yeah,
value.
lower property values.
Makes sense. Makes sense. So we all used to work together at Publix, and we all got to really connect through Publix. And the reason why I invited both of you is because I want to talk about the education system as well as the effects on parents and the role in parents' lives when putting your kids in the education system. Period. So, what was it like teaching? And for those that don't know, Mr. Dan Scott here, he went viral for I don't exactly know what. So why don't you
Okay,
discuss that a little bit?
Let me go with the vague question of what was it like teaching. I'll start with that. Teaching was a cool career. I knew that I wanted to teach through college. My mom is a career teacher, so I kind of had a general insight on the the career of education, and definitely something that enticed me. I really wanted to be there to kind of be a supportive role model for kids. I had a big passion for history. So I kind of locked in college where I decided that all my best teachers in life were all history teachers. I always enjoyed listening about history. I always enjoyed learning about history. And so it was kind of the no-brainer. If I'm going to teach, that's the topic I'm going for. It was a good job. I mean, at its core, you show up. It
has its ups and downs.
Yeah, you're doing your performance.
Correct.
And you get to do something that you're passionate about. And that's something that's pretty rare in jobs. I'm not passionate about property appraisal. That's not a thing that I think anybody is passionate about. It's not something you can have a passion for. But for teaching in history, that was fun because it was definitely something that I got to wake up every day and I got to talk about things that interested me and hopefully make it interesting for
the people listening.
Them, that didn't work. I wasn't talking about Fortnite, so that was.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah,
It is a much different
Clash
time than when we
Royale.
were kids.
Yeah, they definitely had different perspectives on the world and came from a different period of time. And even though my first year teaching, I think I was 23. And so I was teaching 16-year-olds. So I was 7 years older than them. And
you're pretty much in the same age group at that point.
100%. And so I definitely understood them. I got their lingo. I got their cultural upbringing. I was playing the same video games they were playing. But the stark difference that 7 years made, that they were completely different people than who I was or how my.
Can you describe how?
Social media.
Yeah, social media has had such a big impact on our children, for sure.
Grown up in a completely different age.
Well, people don't realize that when you're on your phone and you're doing things like social media, it is a massive burst of dopamine.
Oh, 100%.
And
100%.
we are literally allowing ourselves to raise generation of dopamine fiends.
Oh, yeah. No, and they are addicted to it.
And it shows in especially classrooms because they don't have that ability to go without that dopamine rush for for too long. Because
and I think that's something that we can all kind of speak to is our age. We're not excruciatingly old. We grew up in a technological era, and there was definitely social media around when we were in school, but it was so different.
It was very different. It was brand new too.
It was definitely.
I remember. I mean, I'm sure people still do it, but I remember people just always putting the worst things on Facebook.
Yeah.
Just
100%.
the absolute worst things possible.
100%. But you delay our time period by 7 years, and you see people who had 7 more years worth of social media.
Well, I'm a little older than you guys, but social media really wasn't a thing until I was in high school.
You had MySpace, in high school.
Middle school, we had MySpace, but I wasn't allowed to use it.
Sure.
My parents were very strict about social media until I was in high school. And, my whole experience in high school was really rough. I had learning disabilities that no one was aware of, not even myself, and just trying to conform to a system that I was never made for.
Sure.
So it was constant struggle after struggle. But seeing the difference between just 7 years
Yeah.
is
Oh,
kind
it
of
was
crazy.
stark.
Like that's
It was
how
stark.
much social media and the technological age has impacted our lives.
Yeah, I think I got my first smartphone in senior year of high school.
Oh
it's
yeah, damn. See, smartphones weren't even a thing.
They've had them
When I was in high
since
school.
like 4th grade.
My first phone was
So,
like
I think I got
exactly.
mine early because we moved to Florida from New Jersey, so I was one of those early adapters. But I mean, the smartphones we had back then are nothing.
Oh, they
compared to
paled
now.
in comparison to
Correct.
what we got
I
now. Yeah,
basically
absolutely.
had a Nokia flip phone at the time.
Absolutely.
Yeah, my first thing was a LG like flip thing,
I
and
had the LG Voyager.
okay.
And things were far less instantaneous back then. I mean, like I remember like the first iTouches didn't even have like cameras built in.
That's
Yeah.
what
So
they
it was
were
like
called. iTouch.
iTouch, yeah, iTouch.
I was trying to think about it the other day because that was my
Yeah.
first like iPod device.
Yeah,
Was an
yeah.
iTouch.
And they didn't even have like cameras. You know, like they lacked a lot of the core functionality
And now
of like our modern technology.
Our phones have it.
Oh, 100%. You know, and
It's-
so the fact that like kids can just kind of pull these out whenever.
And they do. It's not like they're
it's debilitating
restricted.
to them.
Correct.
It's debilitating to them, and so that was definitely an incredible, like eye-opening experience of like getting into teaching and being like, whoa, like this. I was just in high school, like
And this is not what it was like.
yeah. I started teaching in 2020. I graduated in 2015. And so, you know, being 5 years removed from high school and going right back into it and teaching 11th grade,
You
like
can-
not even teaching freshmen, like teaching like the top dogs, like they were
Correct.
almost done. And seeing how different those kids were from me and just being like, whoa, like I'm going to have to approach.
So could you
this
describe
differently.
like behaviors? Like, so I
They
know
can't
that this-
read, Joey.
like that's kind of what I'm asking.
Yeah,
Like, is that
yeah,
essentially
Yeah, no, it really it is at its core our like education system has kind of just failed these kids, and on top of that, our harsh economic times and a changing landscape for the world has led to less and less parent involvement. The kids not having support centers at home. You can very quickly tell the difference between your best students and your worst students, and you can tell in like how they were raised, because you have your best students who are overachievers, like will write you a full essay for every question you ask. They are, everything's on time, they are cordial, mannerly, they apologize.
well,
if
the
something's
system
not
they
done
fit
right.
in the system.
Yeah,
they
exactly.
and not only that, they probably have a great support system at home.
That's what matters.
Because-
that's what does it for them, is that they have that parental support. They had people that like read to them. When
Correct.
They were kids. And then you got the have-nots, and it's not necessarily that those kids were all bad. I had plenty of kids that did not know how to read that were joys to be around. They were
Correct.
nice people, and they were definitely raised well. It's just they didn't have a support system that worked, or any challenges in their life were not met. Like they might have been
They were addicted to comfort.
or
like-
that they might have had like a learning disability that they just were never given the right support to overcome, and so it was challenging for them, and they struggled
Kinda
and
like
they struggled and they
With
struggled.
me,
Yeah,
because
100%.
it's way more common than people realize to go
Yeah.
most of your life without realizing
Undiagnosed,
your mind is different. Because
Yeah.
in my circumstances, I was able to be intelligent enough to not let my learning disability be obvious,
Yeah.
but also like having those learning disabilities so visible to where I was barely scraping by.
Yeah.
But nobody even questioned it because of, well, my ability to just know what they were talking about. Like I was able to my teachers always said that I was way smarter than I ever allowed it to appear.
Yeah, sure.
And the biggest thing about that is because once I learned something, I didn't see the purpose in doing homework or
Yeah,
doing classwork.
sure.
So I literally passed high school and middle school by test alone.
Yeah,
When it came
yeah,
to
yeah.
homework or classwork, I was barely
And
present.
it's doable. I mean, they definitely frown upon it. They don't want teachers passing students who don't do any work. But no, it's definitely possible to just grasp
Scrape by.
the subject matter and not really have to work for it.
But also, my home life was a wreck. like in personally, I was dealing with abuse in the sense of like trauma that happened as a kid, and then I was dealing with parents that weren't present because my dad was a flight attendant, so he was always gone, and then my mom had 8 kids.
Yeah.
So it wasn't just one-on-one. It was her having to balance so many different things. And we also did activities. We played soccer. They did dance. So she was running around all the time. So by the time we were in high school, she was burnt out as a parent. And the effects
A good mom spread too thin. You know, that's
absolutely.
That's really what it is, yeah.
And that's also why I brought Austin here, because he has a son as well as I do. And I wanted to ask him, because he works full-time, your grocery... Team leader, that's what it is, GRS. How does that affect your ability to be a father?
It's tough at times, especially the schedule that we get. So a lot of the times I'll do basically overnights going at 2. So then I got to go to my second job of being a dad, and you got a high-octane kid that wants to do something, and you just got to find that energy.
And it's not even like that it's a high-octane kid. Kids are just high-octane.
Exactly.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, well, but you got to just find some way to muster some energy to be a dad.
Just be there.
That's tough at times. You get home, you're so tired, you don't want to do anything. You got the stress of work and bills and all that. And
that was the biggest reason why I left Publix, because it was diminishing my ability to be a good father. And my whole thing is breaking generational curses and cycles. And when I realized that my parents' lack of involvement in my life had such a big part in my success in school, that's when I started to put Peter first. Mm-hmm. Actually, that's when I started to put my mental health first, because for a while I was putting bills over my mental health. Yeah. I was putting everything over my mental health without even realizing it. And when I realized I was doing that, it was like a light bulb. And 2 weeks later, I quit Publix because I saw it even more. And it was like, shit, I do not want to fall victim to this system that is not meant for us to be great parents.
Yeah, and it's so easy to fall into that routine. You know, you go in, clock in day out. It just becomes mundane, and you fall right into that system. And it's so easy.
And it's the corporate world.
Yeah.
They don't give a fuck about your family.
It's exploitative at its core. You know, it's attempting to try and monopolize as much of your time for profit as they possibly can, and with no regard to, you know, your familial,
correct
duties.
Do you remember when I was interviewed for the GRS position?
Yeah.
So the question that made me not get the position was something about, where do you see yourself with Publix in like 10 years? And I said, well, hopefully I'll be able to be here full time and going to school so that I can do something with my knowledge that I have. And they were like, well, we're expecting people to put Publix first, and so on and so forth. And I said, well, unfortunately, my son always comes first before anything else. And if that's not going to allow me to get the job, then so be it. But it didn't. So, like, me being truthful and honest didn't get me the position. So, right off the bat, because this was only a year into Publix at the time.
Yeah.
And right off the bat, I was like, this isn't for me. They don't want to give a fuck about my family. I don't want to give a fuck about them. And slowly after that, it started to diminish.
Yeah.
And I started to see, I even tried doing different departments to see if I can make it work. I did deli, I did meat department, I did produce. Like, I was everywhere. And yes, they tried to care about me and my needs, like as far as a father goes. But at the end of the day, it was all about numbers.
Yeah, that's all it is.
It was all about numbers and hours. And when you put this type of mentality into a system, now that's over 200 years old, 300, like America. Because America was built around capitalism. And it's gotten to the point where it's evolved that money is more important than family. And it shows, because when there's a lack of connection to your parents, you seek connection elsewhere. And usually with kids, they get that connection with their peers.
Yeah.
So when they connect with their peers, it's in a way that is so unhealthy, because that connection is supposed to be with your parents, or adults rather, that we're now having kids teach kids how to deal with traumatic situations.
Sure.
That they don't even know are traumatic situations. And then we are sending them to school to deal with teachers who are so detached from them because, I don't know, sometimes teachers don't even fucking like their jobs.
No, sure. And I think, speaking on that it's definitely a struggle where a kid that does not have a parental support, figure
System.
in their life, they will sometimes apply that to you. If you are a teacher that they feel safe around.
And that's it.
And yeah.
If there's even a glimpse of connection, they will latch on because it is the only source of light in what they think is a dark world.
Yeah. And I mean, on one hand, that is a beautiful feeling to feel like you are providing a safe location for a kid.
It's also,
but also that's not my job, right? And like I just met this guy. Like you get like a set of 150 each year,
correct.
and you're expected to deal with them for a year, and that's it. And so when you get a kid and they want to start like dumping family trauma on you and stuff like that, it's like, wow, I really appreciate that you feel comfortable sharing that with me, but also like, I met you 6 weeks ago, so like I don't know what's going on with your mom and dad.
Well, how do you So, do you think, do you think if you were prepared in college for them to be emotionally vulnerable with you, that you would have been able to navigate it better?
I don't think it has anything to do with that. I think that college does prep you a decent amount if you take some education courses to kind of get you a rough idea of like behavioral management strategies and stuff like that. I think that you have to be an emotionally
available
empathetic person.
Got
you. You have to be that, because there's a lot of teachers that just aren't. And the kids are not stupid. They know who's who. So like they don't.
Well, it's a vibe.
They don't trauma dump on the teachers that
correct.
don't care about them.
Well, it's obvious.
Of course.
And I saw that this year with Peter. But go ahead.
Yeah. They go to the people that they feel safe around. They go to the people that like work for them. I had a student. It was my first year teaching. I had a student named Gus. He was awesome. So one of my favorite students of all time. He was just a quiet kid, skateboarder, kind of just gave like big loner vibes. Like he was just kind of doing his own thing, And he had friends, of course. He wasn't like a weirdo. Like he was like just kind of like the beatnik rebel, like not conforming, And so I had him for 3 periods out of the day. I had him for homeroom. I had him for my 7th period U.S. honors class, and then I had him for my my study hall. And so, when you got a kid for 3 periods, you can talk to that kid.
Correct.
You got to
start to build a relationship.
You got to form a bond with that guy because, he just
spends the majority of his day.
You're going to see him a lot, and so you don't want to have like a rocky relationship with that guy. And I remember the first day I gave them, I was so ambitious, as a teacher. I was like, I'm going to go in and do a little icebreaker with these guys, and I gave them like these like take home papers, or I had them like fill them out or whatever on their desk, and it was just like questions about themselves, but it was like fun questions. It was to kind of gauge their personalities. Like, if you could bring 3 items on an abandoned island, and only those 3 items, what would you bring? And they all say phone. They did.
Even though it wouldn't work.
No, they all did though.
Why is that TikTok working?
Yeah,
exactly.
I'd bring my TikTok, and no, that's really it. It really is. It was so funny how many people just put phone. But no, there was a question on there, and Gus, being this like edgy kind of guy, made like a suicide joke, and I'm like, God, like, what? This is like my first day, man. Like,
don't you have to report that stuff?
I do. So, or I did. I was a mandatory reporter, and I think like there's only a few careers that really have to
mandatory report.
Yeah, it's teachers, doctors, like people in the medical world. Basically, like if I suspect that a student is suicidal or like being abused or anything like that, I do have to report them, and I can't even do it anonymously. Like
you
I
have to
report
name
them, like,
who you are.
full off to CPS, like Child Protective Services, and let them know. And so I was freaking out because I'm like, oh my God, like this is the first day and this is crazy. And so I remember I like talked to the principal. I like went to the principal and I was like, hey, you might want to see this. Like, what should I do? I don't know what I'm doing yet, And she was like, oh, that's Gus. And like she was like,
that's hilarious.
She's like, that's just how
his
it is,
humor,
And like she's like, you don't need to be concerned about him. Like he's fine. He's just doing that because he's kind of like that. And so that told me everything I needed to know about Gus. I'm like, this guy just gives teachers shit. Like he's just like constantly trying teachers. And
That's hilarious.
I was fine. You know, I was like, okay, fine. You know, like, but I was like, all right, I'm gonna keep an eye on that guy. And so like I would just like walk up to him. He'd be like playing games on his phone with like a buddy or something like that, and I'd just be like, hey, what are you guys playing? You know, and just like kind of make light chit chat with him. And for whatever, something clicked in Gus that he was like, trust this guy, trust this teacher. And
you probably asked him how his day was going or something.
and
Something
that was
so
enough,
small.
yeah, that like no other teachers were doing that
Correct.
for Gus or something. But it was study hall, and I was sitting at my desk, and I just remember he walked over and he grabbed my stool that I sat on when I taught, and he parked it right in front of my desk, and he sat down and he just went, so the other day, and just started telling me a full story.
Oh,
Just
God.
unprompted, just not like anything traumatic or anything. It was just like, yeah, and then I went to Taco Bell, and like just like spilled his whole day, like
Wow.
itinerary to me, and I was just like, are we like this? Like, are we bros? Like, what are we like? Are, like,
Well,
are you
I mean,
cool with me?
It's so that connection right there and the rarity of it for this kid, obviously, for it to happen so quick. It just tells us that we do not have anything available for, well, I mean, we have things available at cost, of course, but there's nothing freely available for kids to feel like, for somewhere for kids to go to feel safe and secure.
Yeah.
The whole reason why I wanted to be a teacher is specifically that aspect right there, because there were teachers that stood out to me that understood me in a way that my parents didn't even. So I was comfortable with them, and they've changed the way the trajectory of my life. And what happened between when I was in school and now is like it was rare back then. Now it's almost non-existent to have a teacher like you to offer a safe space to even feel comfortable. We've systematically gotten rid of so many avenues that we used to have available to us. Like, let's just take church, for example. If we were to survey a bunch of high schoolers today, the fastest growing religion is non-religion.
Sure.
So when we talk about religion 50 years ago, it was a community thing. Most of your community was going to one or another church or denomination or whatever it was.
Sure.
And being that I grew out of the church, so like we were a part of a Catholic youth group called Life Team. That's where we first met, and our relationship has just grown.
Absolutely.
But I didn't find solace in school. I didn't find solace in home. I found solace in church. And that's why I did so well in church, and that's why I wanted to make my life around church. I wanted to build it like that, be my foundation.
Yeah.
So when I became an atheist, I realized that if I didn't have church, I would have had nowhere to go.
Oh, sure, yeah.
And if I had nowhere to go, suicidal thoughts would have just gotten worse, and things would have ended in a way that I wouldn't be here. And for me to be aware of that, and then to see kids struggle with even more than what I did, it's painful to watch. And then to pull parents out of their lives so that they can fucking afford a living.
Yeah.
It's insane. And then for us to base our children's success on our ability to be there for them while being forced not to be, it's like we're only continuing a cycle that is just going to end up having everybody be fucking homeless on the street.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's becoming more and more unaffordable by the day to be a parent, to
give them opportunities. Like, my son loves soccer, and I would love for him to be in a competitive league, but it's like $2,000.
Oh, 100%.
It is absurd, and it's just, how do we offer these kids opportunities in a way that they deserve it?
Yeah.
Like, it's not something that is a luxury. It's something that our children need.
Yeah.
It's these systems of community and connection, especially between adults. Because if we don't have connections with adults, we're allowing our kids to teach kids.
Oh, yeah.
So, and that's the biggest thing that I have an issue with, because...
And I see it all the time. I see a lot of people talk about child-free spaces and talk about, oh, don't bring your kids here.
Correct.
Oh, this is for adults. Don't bring your kids here.
Which is okay.
And it's fine. I think there's a balance.
But there's never
family
family affairs are usually like festivals, whatever. You know what I'm trying to say.
Sure. Well, I went to a baseball game last night. I was at the Rays game, and behind me was like maybe a 5-year-old, 6-year-old.
Nice.
And she kicked the shit out of my chair the entire night. But you know what? Like, it was like I could either turn around and be like, "Hey, knock it off," or I could be like, "This is a kid at a baseball game, and they're just being a kid.
They're trying to
like
have fun.
they don't understand."
But
that
do you
what they're
realize
doing is
parents don't
annoying.
even have that mindset?
No, and their parents sat there and watched them kick my chair for the entire game, and it's like I want to walk up to the parent and be like, "Pay attention to your kid."
Correct.
Like,
And because that's
correct
literally
behavior?
a big part of children acting out.
Yeah.
Is due to the lack of connection
Yeah.
and feeling like they are valued and loved. So I guess my goal is to create a space where both parents and children and young adults all have a place to connect over things to connect over. Like
It's called the PTA, baby. That's what you're gonna.
well, can you actually go into the PTA a little bit? Because I've been
it's
thinking
like non-existent.
about getting involved because with this year, Peter's 3rd grade teacher was awful. Not only did she like not show up to parent-teacher conferences, she would blatantly disregard the advice that I would give her. So I know my son is ADHD, borderline autism spectrum. We're getting him looked at this over the summer this year. And I tried to tell this teacher, like, he has anxiety problems. He has this. So one thing about my son is his mom left at 3 years old. So she has a major health issue that has rendered her incapable of really caring for our son.
Sure.
And whether he's aware of that or not, we come to find out about a year later when he describes the experience to us that it was traumatic. So he has this abandonment wound.
Sure.
So he is going to be extra no matter what. Because he already feels like he's not worthy. He's not loved. It took us a while to, I didn't know any of this shit.
Yeah,
starting
sure.
When I first got Peter, it was winging it all the way. It wasn't until I started to see my parents in myself that I was like, something's got to change. I do not want to make the same mistakes. I do not want to make him feel insecure about how he acts being a kid.
Yeah.
So I started to learn about it. And it was hard at first because you almost have to accept the fact that you're traumatizing your kid more often than you realize.
Sure.
But the biggest gain, I guess you could say, that I got from it was realizing all of it is fixable if you create connection. And it's...
You need a support. Like, you need a bridge between you and everybody that deals with him. And, when it comes to a teacher who is either, lazy, wants to neglect their responsibilities, wants to disregard...
Well, she would ignore it. And then she would write home in his planner that he was misbehaving. And so my whole thing is, if you get in trouble in school, you get in trouble in school. You're not going to get in trouble at home.
Sure.
Because you're going to face consequences there. You don't have to face double consequences. My job is to love you no matter what, so that you feel confident to take on the world. Now, if he breaks rules at the house, that's different. I definitely am a very, structured parent. I have rules. I have forms of discipline. And none of them involve, spanking. I spanked my kid once, and that's because he punched Sabrina in the face.
Oh, my God.
And that was a hard moment for me. But basically learning that no matter what you do with your kid, if there's no relationship, no matter how you try to discipline them, it's not going to work. Yeah. And it's the same thing with teachers. If you don't try to connect with your fucking students, they're going to be an asshole just to be an asshole because they're reflecting
a great story for that.
your
I got a great
attitude.
story for that. I have a student, I won't name him, but I had a student who was just like a hothead. Like, you just, he
Probably
could
me
fly
when I was in high school.
Yeah, he could fly the handle at like any minute. Yeah, but not like explosive. Like, he's the kind of guy that would just like start a fight, like start
gotcha.
like swinging,
Had a chip on his shoulder.
Yeah, and so he's just like not a kid that you just want to push his buttons. But then I had another student who just pushed buttons, and so there's a way to like handle those kind of people, and at its core, you got to build a support, you got to build trust first, so that you can nip those behaviors in the bud. I was a teacher that did not like to write kids up. I did not like to involve other people because I feel like the second you
Involve
let
someone
go of
else,
that control,
you don't
you're-
give a fuck.
You're passing that kid
Correct.
off. You're not trying to see their perspective. They don't ever want to work with you ever again. So I knew that this kid was going to fly off the handle at one point or another. It was pretty apparent. And then you have the kid that pushes buttons, pushing his buttons. He was kicking the back of his desk, right? The annoying kid. Just kicking the back of his desk, pissing him off.
Purposely.
Well, yeah, because he was just like,
Yeah,
you
correct.
know? And so the kid that I knew would fly off the handle one day got up and flipped his desk. Like, got up and they were, like, the seat desks. Like, they were connected. It wasn't like
So
it
he was
like
in it.
Yeah, just flipped his desk and was like, quit kicking my desk. And, like, got up and was screaming in his face. And so I was like, yo, hallway now. Like, and just got that kid out of the room. And so he, like, stormed out there. And I walked out there with him and I went, look, I get it. I was like, I get why you flipped his desk. I would have too. He's annoying. I get it. Like, I understand.
You offered a place of understanding.
Yeah, I understand why that happened. And I need you to understand why that can't ever happen again. And so I was like, dude, I'm not mad. Go take a walk. Like, go take 5 minutes. Walk the campus and come back. Like,
You can do that?
and cool. No.
Because honestly,
No.
that's all any teacher needed to say to me when I
Yeah.
lost my shit. Because as an adult now, one of my biggest ways of decompressing or defusing is walking.
Yeah.
If I go for a walk, 20 minutes later, I am a different person
Yeah.
than I was when I was triggered, if you will.
I told the kid, I was like, look, I'm not going to ever be mad if you are the bigger person and you walk out of the room and you take a minute walk and you come back. I'm going to be mad if you keep flipping desks in my room. I'm like, that's what.
Yeah, you're going to have to
I'm
take
like,
action at some point.
We can't have that, right? So go take a walk, come back, cool off, sit down, just get through the day. Then I pulled the other kid in the hallway and I was like, quit kicking his desk. I was like,
Yeah.
that kid got yelled at because I was like, you're pushing people's buttons and you know that you're
just
doing it.
antagonizing.
And you're doing it to kids that, like, you know are gonna fight back and they can't. Like, they quit creating a toxic environment in my classroom. Like, go sit down. Like, quit kicking people's desks. I eventually had to move that kid, like, on an island because he just would not stop bothering people.
But I was the kid that if that happened to, because I never flipped out unless my buttons were pushed.
Sure. Yeah.
I was always like, because I was a Catholic kid. Fighting
Kids
was
are
my last
generally
resort.
calm.
Yeah.
Kids are generally calm until you mess with them, you know?
And I was always the kid that got like 10 days OSS. No one tried to listen to me. It was always my fault. Like, I remember my teacher saying, because I got into a fight in 10th grade. I fell asleep on the table. Some guy slapped me against the head to wake me up. And I was like furious. I said, what the fuck? And I pushed him.
Yeah.
And 30 minutes later, he's behind me choking me. And do you know what the principal said to me? You shouldn't have been sleeping in class. Like, what the? All because he was a football star.
Yeah.
And it was like, this is what kids are now dealing with on a much larger level.
Oh, yeah. You
Like-
throw cyberbullying in there, too. Like, that's
Exactly.
It's crazy.
It's
yeah.
so much more intense nowadays. And if that kid didn't have you, he would have been 10 days OSS.
Well, and guess what? He never flew off the handle again.
And
Like, that was...
he felt he didn't have to anymore,
built
at least
trust
in your
with me.
class.
Yeah, because and then there was a respect built, which is not necessarily a thing that I encourage or believe in. I really hate the mindset that a lot of people are instilled with. That's like, don't show anybody respect until you get it, and it's like, no, treat everybody with respect. And if they start disrespecting you, then you can decide that you're not going to respect them. But there is
But even with not respecting people, you could still respect people.
yeah, there was a strong like shift in dynamics, at least in like, you know, my school in my neighborhood, that like these kids came in and were just belligerent and disrespectful, but they expected you to respect
respectful
them.
to them.
And then the second that you start giving anything back to them, they're like, well, you can't talk to me like that. I'm like, tough, I am. Like, I'm talking to you like that right now. Like,
Did you ever get in trouble?
no.
It's like, so what, are there any limitations on yelling at students? Like, because my son was yelled at a lot this year.
That's what you can get away with.
I was wondering, like, if I were to call the principal and been like, oh, my teacher's yelling at my student or my child, would they get in trouble?
It depends. I mean,
on the severity of the yelling?
I think the thing is that, like, I never did anything to students that rendered them to go home miserable. Like,
That makes sense.
you know, I would look at a kid and be like, "Yo, shut up!" Like, and like you know, like it's not a respectful way to tell them to be quiet,
But
but
it's
like that's
in a
what
way they
resonates with
understood.
them. That's a way that they get. you know?
Correct.
And there was a certain way to talk to kids that I think a lot of teachers just don't understand.
They've lost
now,
touch with.
that. Like, they don't get that. That's like, you approach it from a perspective of like, how do they talk to their peers? That's how you talk to them. Like, because that's what they understand. Like, if you start talking to them like you're a crusty adult, and they only really know like teenage peer, you know, conversation
Interaction.
they will not understand.
Two different
being
worlds.
Like, you'd be like, now Chester, sit down, please.
It's
and,
two
and
different
be
worlds,
quiet. Like,
two different
that's-
languages.
They don't speak like that.
Correct.
If they don't talk like that, then you can't talk like that to them because that won't work. You would not believe, like, something that I never saw when I was in high school. You would not believe, and I'm talking like AP level kids, like the smartest and brightest minds, that just like curse unapologetically to a teacher. And just be like, that's fucked up. I'm like,
I guess we're
okay,
talking like this.
Can we use different language in my room? But like, it is fucked up. But they would do that and like just like straight up say that to your face.
But
and I'm like, wow, that's a weird. Like, I wasn't a part of that world, but I guess that's how we're doing things now.
I'm a part of that world.
Yeah,
I
sure.
curse a lot.
I do too, but
and-
it was appalling to see these kids do that to a teacher.
Correct. When
somebody
we
in, like, an
were
authoritative
raised
position.
so
Yeah.
differently.
Where like you're like, whoa, like I would have never done that. Like I would have never been sitting in my like AP US class and being like, yo, Hitler was kind of fucked up. Like I was like, I wouldn't have said that. You know, I would have
But
been
I
like,
feel
wow,
like-
this is bad.
I feel like free language like that is better than restrictive language.
Oh yeah, and it also
because-
shows that the kids are getting it. You know,
And
they're
it also,
feeling something.
I think we put more power to words than words do.
Yeah.
So the more you tell them not to do something, the more they're going to do something. And cursing was one of that. Like, so, and it did. I used to get written up for it.
Yeah.
Like, because it was so frowned upon.
Yeah. Well, I would rather a kid say that something that I taught them, like a historical event, was fucked up than rather them say like indubitably, because like it just shows that like when they say like that's fucked up, I'm like, okay, so they get it. Like they're like taking
Comprehending,
in the
yeah.
information and they're like, whoa, that shouldn't have been how it happened. Like that shouldn't have been something that they did. And I'm like, okay, so they grasped the concept. You know, like they really took into effect all of the facets of what I taught them and are like having an emotional connection with it, you know, not just like and yes, he did do that. Like, it's like, you know, there's so much more going on there. So, you know, fine. I'm like, find a different
It's
word.
language.
But like, that was it. Like, I never wrote
You
them
don't
up. Yeah.
put a taboo over language.
No,
And
no.
and I think that's a smart move because, like I said, the more you do it, the more they're gonna.
Yeah, I got called the
disregard it.
N-word one time. That was fun. There's
Did you get called a simp too?
no.
I get called boomer. I
boomer?
used to at
Yeah.
Publix.
You boomer.
When I was
I'm
working
starting
there.
to become the boomer. At
Yep,
Publix.
that's right. That's right.
Yeah.
What do you like, Austin? What kind of tools do you think would help in a situation where? Not even tools. Like what kind of things would help someone in your situation where you're forced to work so often and the connection with your kid is struggling because of it, but also working for a company that doesn't care about it? Like, what would you do if you had free reign right now?
If I had free reign,
Like to navigate, to structure your life around.
I wish I could work just a little less, you know, to take that time to do stuff with AJ. Like,
How many hours a week do you work?
I work 40.
And nothing over it.
Yeah, try not to.
And how much does your fiance, by the way?
She also works full
Congratulations.
time. Thank you.
Congratulations.
So yeah, it's not like back in the day where you could have a stay-at-home mom and then you always have
Correct.
somebody to be with your child. But we're forced to work 2 jobs and our schedules have to align a certain way. So there's somebody for AJ. So even not just
So you guys are basically raising them alone together.
It's basically like 2 single parents, and then we have to find the time.
And that's
through
what was
our
going
day.
on with Kelly and I.
So it's tough, but I try to find avenues. Like AJ's very into video games. So
Nice.
I take the time to play with him on that kind of stuff. Like we were playing Fall Guys the other day.
Do you ever read to him, Austin? Please read to your
Nikkei
kid.
reads to
I
AJ.
don't read to him. I don't read to Peter,
Yeah.
but we have reading time. I'm trying to
that's
get
good.
more strict with it too, and I do want him to start reading to me out loud more,
Oh, yeah, no.
just so that he
helps.
can hear himself read.
Helps tremendously.
Yeah,
but-
Nikkei kind of handles the reading aspect, but I try to be
No, that's
like
good.
the disciplinary. So I try to have him get his chores and all that, and then do the fun stuff with him. I'm trying to sign him up for baseball. But like you said, that stuff, it's crazy
It's expensive.
And that's a huge avenue for me and AJ. We love baseball. Like, I take him to Phillies games and all that. So I'm really excited for that to just have more of a connection. But it's tough. It's just really.
So something that I learned about myself is if I took care of myself first, spending time with Peter came naturally.
Yeah.
So I have a morning routine that it may seem long, but it's 3 hours. I wake up at 6, and at 9 o'clock, I go into the house and, like, talk to Peter, and I'm on father duty.
Yeah.
If I don't have those 3 hours, I am exhausted.
Yeah.
Yeah, you
Peter.
feel like you haven't had any
I
time
haven't
yourself.
had. I didn't recharge,
And then
essentially.
you get, like, agitated and stuff.
So the biggest thing that helped me was putting time aside and letting Peter know if I don't have this time, I am a different person.
Yeah.
And he's also aware of himself. If he doesn't have certain amount of time to, let's say, play outside, or if he doesn't eat the right food, he'll see the difference in his behavior. And it is crazy what 20 minutes of letting your kid do what he wants to do does for their ability to communicate with you.
Yeah.
So, just spending 20 minutes a day with my kid, allowing him to have free reign, has changed the ball game for me the most.
Well, and I was just messing around with the reading thing, but like, no, I think the problem is just that like obviously you said you're both working 80 hours combined, a week, and they're
And you're still
are
struggling,
so-
I bet.
Oh, yeah.
It's
Yeah,
ridiculous.
You don't get paid anything.
Nope.
Like,
the time that you can actually have with a child is so fleeting, and it's so important, for their development. But
And it doesn't happen ever again.
you come
Nope.
home, you're
like he's
you're
already
tired,
6. Like, I took one blink, and then now he's already
Yeah.
going into kindergarten and stuff. And
And it's these little things that made me realize, like, oh shit, I am making the same mistakes as my parents. I am being absent in my child's life. I'm not setting up my kid for success because now he does, but he wasn't offered that place where he can be entirely himself and feel comfortable expressing what he feels without feeling like he wasn't safe. Yeah. So, I think just offering that knowledge to parents is a big thing, but to be able to offer them an environment where sports are sponsored, where learning the arts is sponsored, like all of these different things that used to be available through school, which are no longer available.
Taking that stuff away. Like, growing up, my big avenue was sports. I wrestled and all that, and that's how I really dealt with a lot of my stuff. Like, school, after middle school, I didn't really care. I would sleep. I had AP classes. I would just sleep in the classes. And besides certain teachers, I wouldn't even really give a shit.
Well, and you'd be surprised how many kids that, like, they don't drop out because of wrestling. They don't drop out because of football. Like, that's the one thing in their life
That's
that they
keeping
do
them.
have.
That's it.
It's because it's that sense of they feel they belong.
Yeah.
And when you have that feeling of belonging, it offers you a light in whatever darkness you're in, and we latch on because it's the only thing that feels good.
Yeah.
And it's the only thing that is a true connection with other human beings.
Yeah.
And we are human beings, and we desire connection, and we're severing it.
And you
in so
perform
many
your
ways.
best when you have it.
Correct.
To cycle back around to the Gus thing, I could see his grades. I could pull up his grades in all of his classes anytime I wanted. And I did, because I would get on him. But
That's funny.
He was, like, failing everything.
That's how I was.
He had, like, a
in high school.
99 in my class. And it wasn't, like, there was no, like...
Do you remember O'Grady?
No.
So O'Grady was my history teacher. He, at the end of the year, this was my senior year, he pulls me aside, and he says, "Why the fuck is your grade so low?" And this was in his class. And I said, "Because I don't care about any of this," like straight up. And he's like, "Well, you realize you're probably one of the smartest students in my class." And I said, "I didn't know, and I guess I don't really care because I never really had that self-esteem that one gets with a healthy, childhood." But he saw that, like, I wasn't performing as well as I should, and now that I know why, it was because I didn't have a support system
Yeah.
or even a system that praised me for doing well, unless it was church related.
Yeah.
So it's crazy, like the difference between
Yeah.
successful.
Gus succeeded in my class because he wanted to.
Correct.
He could have performed in any of his classes. Like he could have, because he was a smart guy. He didn't care, so
Yeah.
he didn't. And even my class, he slept through, And I'd let him because I knew he knew what he was talking about, and I knew that I could wake him up and ask a question at any
He'd
time.
probably know it.
He was in an honors class, and there were times where I would ask, like questions from like a couple days ago, and be like, "And what did I say about blank?" And everyone would kind of just look at me, and then I'd go, "Wake Gus up," and somebody would push Gus, and then I'd be like, "Gus, what is blah blah blah?" And he'd be like, "Nah," and then he'd go back to sleep, and he was right every time.
Every time.
I mean, he cared, so he paid attention in that one. He liked what I had to say, so he paid attention. That guy passed my class with like a 99. He got 100 on just about every single test. It wasn't like I was giving him special treatment. I had no reason to do that, and I would have graded it fairly. The dude just passed all my class because he wanted to, And so that connection does go a long way, and people who feel safe or feel, accepted or feel like they have that genuine
Their
connection.
place in the world.
Yeah.
They feel like they belong
will
in
do
this
better.
world.
They'll do
Correct. And that's a big part of spirituality when it comes to mental health. Because I believe I follow the Dr. Amen format of the four things, like physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual. And the way he defines spiritual is the belief that you have that connects you to the outer world. So, like, your place in this world, whether it's religion, whether it's this, whether it's that, as long as you are aware of your connection to your surroundings, that is what can be considered spirituality. And, it's just, when you're working on those four things, you realize that each one of these kids are suffering in almost all of them.
Yeah.
Like when it comes to physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual health. And like I said, I'm using spiritual very loosely. But I forgot where I was going with that. But what do you think we could do to offer the like how do we fix this?
How do we fix the education? Oh, okay, so here's my 10-step plan. No,
Here we
there's
go.
no
Let me get my pen.
Yeah. I don't think there's any core way to fix it. I think there's a lot of ways, a lot of avenues that can be taken. I mean, like, the one that I'm personally in favor of the most is I think by, like, 8th grade, you can kind of sort kids.
Into like a certain...
this kid's going to go to college, and this kid has no chance.
that's what they do in England.
And I mean, that works, though. Like, I think that's what we really need as a society, is to break down, like, the core walls of education. And it's just like, instead of just pushing everybody into the go to senior year tract, I think we need to kind of separate children into, hey, what's going to help you the most?
Aptitude test, essentially.
Yeah, and I don't think that like an aptitude test necessarily needs to define a person. I don't think you should take those as hard and fast rules. You can take a kid who excels more in like the blue collar world, but wants to go the white collar route, and you should try. They can try. But I think that like if we offered more in the vein of like, hey, this kid does not understand math, but would understand applied mathematics. Like, they don't get algebra because you're just throwing weird numbers at them and you're throwing the quadratic formula in their face. They don't get that, but they do understand measuring like by volume when it comes to how much mulch goes in a planter because they work a landscaping job.
Correct.
On the side. And so like if you teach it in that way, you can still teach them the core fundamentals. Maybe they don't get a high school diploma. They get a certificate of completion or something through.
Well, the high school diploma has lost all
it
of
has
its,
no meaning.
value.
It has no meaning. And so like maybe they don't get that and we call it something else because they didn't go the like traditional high school route.
Correct.
But
Well,
we give them certifications. We get them like other titles that help them in the job force. I mean, they could be going to trade schools that teach hyper-specific landscaping courses that incorporate geometry, and so they learn geometry, but in an applied way.
Correct.
And I think that's
perfect for ADHD people. That's the only way I learned,
100%.
which is why I struggled so much in,
Yeah.
especially algebra. I had to take algebra twice.
And that's why word problems don't really work, because it's like Sarah bought 48 watermelons, and it's like, I don't know. I mean,
Wait, how many?
how'd she get that in the cart? It's hard to conceptualize that.
In the cart.
Yeah, it's hard to conceptualize that. But when you take a kid and you're like, that wheelbarrow, roll it over here. How many bags of mulch? If each one has, like 20 gallons of mulch or whatever. I don't know how they measure mulch, but like this is how much is in this bag, and
I think
we
it's
need
square
to fill,
inches or square feet, something
Sure.
like that.
And we need to fill this planter, and this planter is this high by this wide by this length. How much do we need? And they're like, oh, 7. You're like, yeah, you did math. Good job. Like, you figured it out because it made sense in this moment. And this will also get you somewhere. You could go do landscape.
Correct. You can create a business out of
Yeah,
it.
100%. And so I think that's the better avenue.
Do you think it would be available in the education system, or do you think it would have to be something apart from it?
It would take a lot of people working together. And I think at its core, one of the biggest problems with retaining people in education is or retaining like teachers in the field of education. It is pay. I mean, there are a lot of teachers that just can't make it on that payment.
Correct.
And I used to explain that to kids all the time. I'm like, the reason I'm paid so little is because I'm replaceable. I'm paid more than like the janitor is, because they might be a little bit more replaceable than me.
But it's still
like,
a replaceable
if I get hit
position.
by a bus, they're going to fill my
Yeah.
role. They're
Real
going to
quick.
have a substitute in here for the rest of the year
Correct.
until they get another guy. They're not going to be like, well, let's retire his jersey, put it in the rafters. Like, it's like, take his work shirt, put that up there, Nobody wears 42 again. Like, no, they're just going to get a new teacher because they have to. And
Correct.
when I quit, they got a new teacher. They hired for it. That's so, you can't make a ton, but you can't undervalue what it takes to be a teacher either. And so if you want to open up like a vocational school where you're going to like, hey, here's the separate track. We're going to teach
Here's what we can do.
landscaping. We're going to teach wood shop and all that. We're going to teach, engineering. You need not teachers. You need engineers.
Correct.
You need landscapers.
People in the field.
And no one is going to leave their landscaping company to go teach landscaping. Unfortunately, that's just not something that you're going to have a lot of people do. And also, those people that went that way maybe don't have a teaching bone in their body. So you're looking for a very rare person. You're looking for a person who not only understands the ins and out of that job, understands it from an applied level, and also can regurgitate that information to children, which is not common.
Regurgitation is the hardest part.
Yeah, it's-
One thing I learned about training
Yeah.
is when you say something while training someone, you say it in the perspective that you know what you're talking about.
You understand it.
Correct. And we project this understanding onto other people.
Why aren't you
and
getting
wait, why aren't you? This is simple. Why aren't you getting it? And I noticed that with Peter too. But really, they just don't know.
Yeah.
It's trying to describe something you've never seen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I have a degree in history, and the perspective that I've always looked at that from is if you can't take the field that you're a master in and explain it to a 5-year-old, then you don't truly know it. Like,
I love that. I've heard that before.
You're not
Doing it.
really
Correct.
understanding it yourself, because if you can't dumb it down to its core parts and explain it
You can't
simply,
teach anybody.
then you don't really know what you're talking about. You only know it from the extreme masterful perspective that you were taught at. And yeah, you might be able to produce results. Like the engineers might be able to engineer, but if they can't explain it to somebody beneath them, then they don't really grasp it as well as
They know the
see.
basic minimums.
They can do the job. but
So
they
it's
can't
almost like me
explain
with
it.
cars. I know how to do maintenance, but I don't know anything about how an engine works. So I can't teach anybody how to do anything. I can
No,
show them how to twist some bolts and stuff, but
Sure.
when it comes to building a car, it's a very big difference
Yeah.
because I totally agree with that. That's
Yeah.
very
It's incredibly difficult to find that subset of people that can take that responsibility on and do it effectively.
teach it.
And so it's difficult to find teachers to begin with.
But
for regular school.
But you left the system,
I
and
did.
you were a good teacher.
I did.
And it's like, I feel like there are more people. There are better teachers that have quit teaching because of the system. That if they were given an opportunity to teach somewhere else with whatever skills they've acquired, they would hop on it in a heartbeat because the passion of teaching is the passion. It doesn't go away.
Yeah. And I mean, I did have a moment of virality when I quit. I did.
That's right.
I did
Talk about it.
Mic drop on the school board. That was fun. I had wanted to go to the school, but there was a school board meeting coming up in 2023, I believe, and it was the big one. Like everybody knew it was the big one. They had to move it because so many people were showing up. They had to move the
That's
location.
kind of good though.
Yeah.
I'd rather parents be involved than not.
Well, they moved it to the Hernando High School auditorium because they could not
Fit everybody.
people in their actual like conference building. And so I had gone, and there were a number of students that I knew that were going, and they were going to speak on the troubles that they were facing, and I was really supportive of that. And I started to write a speech. We only get 3 minutes to talk. I started to write a speech on why adults need to get out of the way and listen to kids, because the kids are here to talk.
Amen.
Yeah.
And so you need to get out of the way because you think you know best, and let these kids speak on behalf of their own lived experience. And so I started to write up a speech, and then I scrapped it, and I started writing purely about me. This was a very selfish moment that I was like, no, that's not what I'm going to do. I am going to just walk in and tell them off to their faces and let them know that, like, they are losing so much more than they think they are. And so I wrote, like, my big slam poetry piece.
There you go.
Like, I introduced my credentials. Well, okay, so first off, I started off as a joke, and this gave me all the confidence that I needed. There was a guy, he was a Proud Boy, like basically just like the New Age KKK.
Oh, God.
who
Oh,
went-
God. I think I know what you're talking
and he
about.
was just talking about how gay the kids were and like how awful they are and they're sinners and that he's an alpha male.
Oh,
and he started
Jesus.
screaming into the mic. He's like, I'm an alpha male and I'm an alpha and like just like was going off about like why his perspective is right and why we need to be enabling our young boys to be alpha males or whatever. And so anyway, I got up to the microphone when it was my turn to speak, and we're supposed to say our name and what city we're from, and that's it. You're just supposed to say that. And so I got up and I said, "Hi, Dan Scott, the city I'm from, alpha male." And the whole crowd just started laughing, and even like the KKK guys, like they were like, yeah, because they thought I was on their side.
Correct.
And then I started talking, and they very quickly realized, oh, he's not on us.
He was making fun of us.
Yeah, he's making fun of us, and they got all mad. It was great, but that gave me all the confidence I needed because now I was like, I made fun of the Nazi, and then I got to keep going. But no, I kind of just dumped it on them. I was like, I'm an AP teacher. The year prior to this year, I had a 70% pass rate on my AP exam, and the global average was like 59.
So you were
60 or
fucking
something like
killing
that.
it.
So I was doing better than the planet, like in that room. Like I was doing better than like every
real alpha
teacher.
male.
They're real.
The real alpha male. I lived up to my credentials, but I kind of just started listing my accolades. I was like, I'm the senior class sponsor. I run homecoming. I run graduation. I run all this stuff. And then I was like, and I quit. I'm done. And here's why. And it was a lot to do with me feeling like I was not able to realistically be there for the kids with like certain legislations going through that was banning me from talking to kids about their mental health. They legislated and made it so that if a kid was going to talk to us about their mental health, we had to get parental approval.
And this is why I did not want to become a substitute.
Yeah.
Because mental health comes to me.
Oh, yeah.
I don't even have to talk about it, and people just open up. And it's like, I
But
get
here's the
fired.
thing about it. You're a mandatory reporter.
Correct.
And so if I suspect that a child is being abused,
You have to report it.
I have to report it.
Which
I
then
need to
you
talk to them
lose your
about it.
trust with every other fucking kid in there.
Yeah, and I have to talk to them
It's so
about
ass
it.
backwards.
But I have to get their parental approval before it. So if their dad is the one beating them at night,
I have to
I have
get
to
their
ask their
approval.
dad if I can talk to them about him beating them at night.
Yeah,
so
what
that
is
I
that?
Can,
Like,
yeah, how does that
was
work?
Such a flawed
How does that
system.
work?
It just sounds like we're creating a system to help
Yeah.
parents continue to abuse their children.
Yeah. They didn't want pride flags in the classroom, which okay, I didn't have one, but they didn't want them in the classroom, and to look at
To an
across the
extent.
aisle and understand
I've been
where
across the
they're
aisle.
yeah
I totally.
to understand their perspective. I don't think they're crazy. I think that they think that that's a bad
Misguided.
you know, and so I understand why they didn't want that. But the way that they went about it, as a way to not come across as they were being like homophobic,
Yeah.
they just said, you're not allowed to have anything in your classroom that is not related to your subject. And I had like a big Shrek tapestry on the wall.
So you would have had to get rid of it.
I would have, and I, because it was a joke I made. I had a birthday coming up, and I told the students, I was like, "Oh yeah, my birthday's this weekend." They go, "You having a birthday party?" I said, "Yeah, I'm having a birthday party." And they said, "What's the theme?" And I said, "Shrek." I was just joking, and then they bought me a giant Shrek tapestry.
That's
that said,
hilarious.
This is my swamp now, and so that went on the wall because
awesome.
of course it goes on the wall,
Yeah.
of course. But like that would have had to come down, and I had a bunch of like Spider-Man posters. I had like a bunch of like pop
Just expressions
figures.
of yourself, essentially.
And those go so far. You have no
Yeah,
idea. Like
they just want you to be in these four walls. It's like almost like a jail cell.
I get the feeling that you like Dragon Ball.
It's just a little bit,
Just a little bit.
you know.
But like,
Just imagine if I had to wear just
Yeah.
an orange jumpsuit with nothing on.
but that's the thing is, I had kids that didn't
Jail.
didn't care one bit about history, but they liked Naruto, and I had like a Naruto pop figure,
Yeah.
and that was enough for them to
If
be
you
like,
use
"Oh, you like
whatever
Naruto?" I'm like,
reference,
yeah, I
bro.
like Naruto.
Any reference that they're familiar
Now we're
with,
connected.
it will get them hooked.
Yeah.
That was something I learned in Life Teen, giving talks. I would always open up a talk with something in pop culture.
culture, contemporary, yeah.
Because you were talking to me earlier, like how
Yeah.
I influenced you. And the biggest reason why is because I drew these connections
Yeah. Yeah.
and they made sense. Not only did they make sense, they like hammered it home.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it truly does make a difference
You'd
when
be
you
surprised.
use their language to talk to them.
Yeah.
And we don't.
Yeah.
So
And that was like, and then kids would just be like, "Who's your favorite Spider-Man?" And like, just stuff like that.
Tom
like, where it's
Holland.
like, yeah. Tom Holland.
Tom
no,
Holland.
Andrew Garfield. Come on, he was.
That's
he
my
was
brother's
so
favorite.
cool. He was
But
so
I
like,
think
Toby.
so. Here's my thing. I think you're a big fan of the first one you watch because I did love Toby
Yeah.
way more
Yeah.
than Andrew. But there's something about Tom Holland, bro.
Tom Holland's great.
I fell in love with Tom Holland acting when he was in
Uncharted. No.
the
Romeo and Juliet.
no,
Yeah.
it was the shit. What was it? The tsunami movie.
Okay, I don't know which one.
Dude,
There's
he was
like
a
70
kid.
of those.
He was a kid, and his performance was phenomenal.
Nice.
And since then, I've been just a huge Tom Holland
Yeah.
fan.
Oh, he does a good job.
Yeah, I like Tom Holland as Spider-Man, but like you said, the first one I can't go.
Tobey
off
Maguire?
Tobey,
Yeah.
bruh.
God, that last Spider-Man was awesome.
That
That was
Yeah,
honestly Into the Spider. Or no,
Oh, yeah.
I think that was the last Marvel movie I've
Uh,
seen in the movies.
No Way
too.
Home.
No Way
Yeah,
Home,
no,
yep.
yeah.
So
That was a
good.
great moment.
I
Yeah.
saw Spider-Man, the second cartoon one.
Across the Spider-Verse? I haven't
watched
watched
that
one
with
yet.
the fam.
It's
Dude,
good.
it was so good.
It was good.
It's on
It was so
Netflix
good.
now.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
But I think our time is wrapping up here, boys.
Oh man.
I love ending really serious talks on
Yep.
my favorite Spider-Man. So this
I
is
love
good. This is
fucking
good.
comic books, so it's all Spider-Man talk is welcome
Spider-Man's
here.
great.
Absolutely.
But thank you guys so much for joining me
Of
today.
course. Yeah,
of course, man.
We'll
Thanks for
definitely have
having
to
us.
have you both on.
Yeah.
And definitely want you guys a part of my team when hopefully I do get something going.
Yeah, man.
Because
Let me know.
our kids are important, and so are our young adults, and
Some
so
of
are our
kids
parents.
important, Some of them.
Yeah, only the ones that like, you know.
That I like
Cool
specifically.
ones, you know.
But all right, you guys have a great day.
Yeah, thanks,
and
man.
talk to you guys later.
Yes, sir.
Yep.